afternoon, Terri. How are you today?
I'm well, and you?
Very well, thank you. We are just soaking in all of the amazing things that all of our panelists have been saying today. So I'm so excited to welcome you to this last batch of workshops that we have today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get to your presentation. We do understand that some people are struggling with load shedding. And so for those people, everything has been recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube, and those links will be sent to you. And yes, and with that, let me get to introducing Terri. So Terri Elliott is a lecturer in applied theatre at the University of Cape Town. She's the author of creative arts textbooks. And today she is going to be talking to us about an introduction to drama across the curriculum. With that, I'm going to hand over to you, Terri.
Great, thank you so much, Adil. Hi, everyone, and good evening. If I do cough or my voice sounds a little strange, I do apologize. I feel like a first year coming for an audition saying that I am actually sick and I've got a terrible ear infection. So please forgive me if my voice doesn't sound 100% on form. But as Adil said, I work at the University of Cape Town. My husband describes what I do as being a drama teacher. So I work at the School of Education and at the Center for Theatre, Dance and Performance Studies in the spaces where drama and education meet. And today I'm going to be looking at drama as a cross-curricular pedagogy. So when Hendrik told me I had 20 minutes, I thought, how do you do this in 20 minutes? So it is a very quick introduction to drama across the curriculum. And just the aim is to provide a few tools for how you could possibly use drama as a cross-curricular methodology, so as a teaching method to teach other subjects. And then I will give you some pointers for where to look if you're interested in further developing the pedagogy and the approach to learning. So if I could have my PowerPoint, please, we're going to launch straight in and do some interactive things, because I don't believe in too much teacher talk when presenting things. So I please need the second slide. Oh, and if anyone would like to email me, there is my email address, terri.elliott@uct.ac.za. If you've got questions, you are absolutely welcome to email me afterwards. I'll be delighted to engage and to chat anything through further. So I'm going to rely on people to engage with me on the chat, because this should be a dialogue, not a monologue. And we are going to start by looking at the woman in the picture. And the first thing that I would like you to flood the chat with is what you think this woman is feeling. And as the responses come up in the chat, I'll facilitate the discussion. So take a moment to look at the picture. And as you think of what the woman is feeling, put the responses into the chat. Okay, so Nikita says she looks stressed. And another response is worried. Concerned, great, yay, they're all coming through. Skeptical, she's thinking about where her children are at the moment. Another skeptical, weary, tired. I'm going to wait for two more and then we can move on with the task. Defeated. Let's see, worried. Okay, great. So the lovely thing is that there is no right or wrong answer. However you've interpreted this is the correct answer. When I looked at this, I thought that I was looking for a woman who looked lonely, but all of these work. So what we've done now is we've tried to imagine the world through the eyes or the perspective of this woman and how she might be feeling, which is the first step in using drama across the curriculum, is trying to imagine the world through somebody else's perspective. So it's like there's that the great thing that Atticus Finch says in To Kill a Mockingbird. He says that you never really understand a person until you've put their skin on and walked around in it. So not saying that we can actually put on other people's skins and fully understand their experiences of the world, but process drama or drama as a pedagogy tries to give your learners that opportunity to see the world through somebody else's perspective. So not only does it grow their worldview and their understanding of the world, but it also develops empathy and tolerance, not tolerance in the negative way, but tolerance in terms of being able to accommodate different ways of thinking and being, which obviously in South Africa is so important. So with this woman, let's now think about one thing in society that has led to her situation. So I'm going to give you an example. In my thing, I was thinking that the woman might be lonely. And the thing that has led to her situation is that she is perhaps in a care setting and her children are not able to come and visit her for whatever reason, geography, economics, that perhaps they don't have money to get transport to come visit her, perhaps they are too busy to work. So think about the feeling that you said that the woman had, stressed, worried, concerned, and then think about what it is in the woman's world that has allowed that to happen, allowed her to be in that situation. And once you have that, pop them in the chat and I'll read a few out. And if the question isn't clear, also let me know in the chat. Okay, great. So Pfizer says family loss, finances or lack thereof, a misunderstanding, a lack of opportunities, another one around poverty, needing to care for other people. Okay, great. So what we've done now is we've tried to imagine the world through this woman's perspective. And now we've tried to consider the broader society and the societal problems that exist in the world that woman lives in. So now I'd like you to imagine, based on the problem that you've thought of that has resulted in the woman being where she is, something that this woman might say that would help to change her situation. So again, I'll give an example. I said the woman might be lonely. The reason might be because she's in a care setting, like a care home, and her children are not able to come and visit her because they live too far away and transport is too expensive. So she might say what she needs to change is that there need to be care settings closer to where her children live. Or she might say transport needs to be more accessible to all people. It shouldn't be so expensive. So think of something that she might say to that problem or that situation that's caused her to feel the way that she feels, that would help that situation to be better. And then put what she would say in the chat, please. And again, if it isn't clear, also just let me know in the chat. Okay, so we've got to forgive and forget. Can we be specific about what we'd need to change? So something would need to change in the thing that she says to the problem. So for example, transport needs to be cheaper, or care homes need to be closer. So we're looking for an actual solution. Can my children move closer? Brilliant. Okay, so she needs to interact with people around her. There should be more suitable jobs for her age group. People need to love and care for each other more. Cornelia, if you could give us an example of how they would do that, that would be amazing. Perhaps she would ask for help from her community or family. So again, what sort of help? What would she need? Help with having people to socialize with. So trying to be as specific about what that solution would be. I need to call person X to ask for advice and a possible contact number for someone to speak to regarding my finances. Great. So I need to find someone and I need to get in touch with a debt counselor or whoever it might be. Please allow my children to travel free at certain times, maybe visiting hours, free travel. Okay, great. So this is what we're trying to do when we use drama across the curriculum, one of the main things is that we're trying to humanize learning. So we're trying to, as I said, imagine learning through somebody else's perspective, but then in doing that, to start to find new solutions or fresh approaches or fresh ways of interacting with the world. So I'm going to do one more example, and then I'm going to touch on a few key points, and then we are open for discussion. So if I may please have the next picture on the PowerPoint. So what I would like each of you to do is I'd like you to quickly, in your mind, imagine the place that you work. So I'm assuming for many of you that might be your classroom at school, it might be an office, wherever that may be, imagine the place that you work. You are in that place. Now, imagine that you are back in your home, in your bed. It's so nice, it's so warm. The alarm goes off, and you have to get dressed. And the idea of the imagination is really key here. So a lot of what I'm doing is saying, imagine that. And you are going to imagine that you are leaving your home, and you are going to, in your mind, trace the entire journey that you need to take to arrive in your place of work. So your office or your classroom or wherever that may be. And I'll give you about 20 seconds to imagine that journey in your mind. Okay, so in terms of the application of the dramatic elements, what we've done here is we're working to generate some investment. So we're allowing the participants to imagine into the dramatic world. And my next step, we're now going to start to shift perspective. So now that you've got that journey in your mind, from your nice warm bed, all the way from your home to your place of work, if I can get the next slide, please. I'd like you to imagine that journey if stairs did not exist. So the buildings don't change, stairs just do not exist. And I'd like you to, just for yourself, not in the chat yet, think of all the places and all the moments where you would encounter a problem with either leaving your home or getting into your place of work. And I'll give you about 20 seconds. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've built belief, and we've gone through an introductory phase by allowing you to connect to something from your own world, your actual journey to work. Then we've shifted your perspective by having to imagine that stairs do not exist. Now we're going to shift into using role to help to work in a fictional world. So I want you to imagine that you are on the Space Transformation Committee at your place of work. So you are working with other colleagues to transform the spaces in which you work, to make them more accessible and more equitable for everybody who works there. And you are going to have the budget meeting for 2023. And I'd like you to think of 2 actual suggestions, so specific suggestions that you could make about modifying your place of work to make it more accessible to people who use wheelchairs. And once you have those 2 suggestions, if you could put them in the chat. And again, if the instruction isn't clear, to also just let me know in the chat. Okay, great. So Fansal says wider doorways and passages. Oh, and Lalu says, please repeat. Oh, hello, Lalu. Please repeat the instruction. So the instruction is that you are on the Space Transformation Committee at your place of work. This committee works to make changes in the space in order to make it more accessible for people in wheelchairs. and you're going to be having the budget meeting for 2023, and you are going to propose 2 changes that they should budget for. So adding a ramp at the bathroom or whatever it may be, based on the areas of concern that you identified when you imagined your route to your office. And once you've got those 2 suggestions, then you can put them in the chat. Okay, so wheelchair entry point in front of every class, so they don't need to go to ends of the stoop to access it. Okay, great. Mini hydraulic lifts, bench desks in classrooms rather than individual desks, automated ramps gliding up, change the steps to ramps into the classroom. Great, and let's see if we've got one more offer. Weighted wheelchairs with seat belts for no gravity passageways. Okay, great. Those are all fantastic offers. So if we can have the last slide, I'm going to touch on a few key points of the idea of using drama across the curriculum. And then we open up to chat, because like I said, learning is a dialogue. So this has a lot of different names. Drama across the curriculum, drama as pedagogy, process drama, an older name for it is drama in education, but there are some key elements that underpin it. And usually when I'm asked to teach this and people say, we'll give you one lecture to teach it, I quite vehemently say no, because what often happens is that when people get an introduction to using role, they then often use it to actually reinforce already present inequalities or injustices. So for example, they might say, divide into partners. Let's have person A, person B, if they're trying to teach about bullying in the class. Person A, imagine that you are a bully. Person B, imagine that you are being bullied. Act it out, and then they'll stop and they'll say, how did it feel to be bullied? And that is not what process drama seeks to do at all. Firstly, because that is creating a situation that is very unpleasant for someone. So that is never the aim of process drama. But secondly, it is too hot. It's not removed enough from the actual situation. So if you do want to use role in your learning spaces and drama as a pedagogy, just consider when you choose the roles that you would like your participants to work in, that those roles are safe, that they are distanced from the actual situation that you're wanting to look at, and that they are not reinforcing any problematic behavior. So that's point number 1. Then the second point is that when using this approach to learning, there should always be a level of investment or belief. So it's scaffolding through something that is familiar to the participant, like your journey from your bed to your office. You scaffold that then into shifting perspective to somebody else's perspective. So starting to imagine that investment and belief is building. Now start to imagine that journey without any stairs, and then shifting that to a fictional context where you can work and roll. So imagine that you're going to a budget meeting for the Space Transformation Committee. So it's a gradual scaffolding and building into the role. As I've said, it works with role, and this allows learners to access different perspectives on the world. The role is usually a group role. And the reason for this is that because it's working with perspectives rather than with fully developed psychological characters, the group roles are easier to work with, and they create that you can work with contrast of perspectives. It works with imagine that or imagine if. So imagine that you are in your home and you are going to take your journey into your office. Now imagine that there are no steps. It makes use of a fictional world, so you ultimately start to work in a world that is not the classroom through the use of the imagination. I'm going to mute because I need. Sorry, please excuse me. It works with metaphor and analogy, so this is really important. So if, for example, we were trying to learn about people who were excluded, say you're doing an introduction in history to the acts and regulations that were introduced during apartheid. And let's say, for example, you're looking at the Group Areas Act and the idea of people who were excluded. You could then possibly link through the idea of metaphor. What do you think it would feel like if you couldn't access a building, if there were stairs? And you could then start to use that metaphor to say, where else in our lives or in our experiences do we exclude people? So the discussion could be broadened, and then you could link that to what you were teaching. So now we're going to look at an entire act that was introduced to exclude certain people from certain spaces. So it's that idea of metaphor and analogy that allows the learning to gain impact in the real life lived experience of the learners. There's always appropriate critical distance when using the metaphor and analogy. So it's never too close or too hot, like the bully example. I mean, that's not even a metaphor, but it's also not too far or too cold. So it's Brecht. You're not getting so hot that you're so emotionally invested, but you're not so cold that there's nothing to drive your engagement with the drama. And then it's using the art form. It's learning through. So it's using the art form as pedagogy. So this may be developed into creating paired role plays or hot seating or tableau work, whatever it is. But the thing that happens in the class relies on the use of the art form for the learning. And then a last thing that I'm going to add before we go into our 10 minutes of conversation and chatting is that a great place to start to look at this is Bell and Heap have a book called Planning Process Drama, and it breaks down. There are 6 planning principles that are introduced in the book. So theme, context, role, frame, sign, and strategy. I think those are them. And it's a great place if you do want to use this. That book talks you through what each of those mean and then how to use that with examples in planning your own lessons. Another person to look at who's doing great work on drama as pedagogy is Katie Dawson. So if you just type in Katie Dawson, drama as pedagogy into the Google Webs, and then you click on video, a phenomenal video of her talking about drama as pedagogy will pop up. So those are 2 easy and very accessible resources if you are interested in looking at this anymore. You're also welcome to email me, as I said, and I think Odile has put my email into the chat right at the top. It's terri.elliott@uct.ac.za. The Elliot has 2 T's, otherwise it bounces back. But I do think that this is a very basic introduction. 20 minutes is very quick, so it might be more useful to get specific questions from everybody, and I can answer those. So basic but not implemented no-nos of role play. Sorry, Aline, I'm not sure that I understand the question.
Maybe while Aline just goes back to her question there, I'll just thank you, Terri. That was incredibly eye-opening for me, and I took a lot away. I think especially what stood out for me was how this process just really develops a real sense of empathy. That then I can see how you could tackle difficult issues like bullying just by opening up and just by placing a student into a different kind of perspective and humanizing other people's perspectives.
Great. I see that Annie says it's not a question, it's a confession. I think that role play is so important in class. I don't think that you should say you're doing it in all the wrong ways. I think just always when you're using role play, just try to consider how you've removed it and made it not too hot. I feel like I'd love to carry on talking more if there are no questions. I mean, I've got more to say, but I also think questions are so important from the people who've been part of the talk. Is there anything that wasn't clear?
Perhaps what I would like to know, Terri, is how, I think, that's a good question. So I'll rather go to other people's question. Edric is asking, what do you consider as too hot?
Okay, great. That's a great question. So if, for example, you are doing I don't know what's in the caps for all the subjects, so I'm just going to make something up that might be in the curriculum. If you are doing a section on, let's say, gender-based violence in life skills or life orientation, and you decide that you want to use role to explore gender-based violence, and you say to your learners, okay, imagine that you are a victim of gender-based violence and you are going to write a letter to your best friend detailing exactly what happened to you. That is a too hot use of role. It's not removed enough. There's not enough metaphor. It's going to be triggering. You're going to open up really problematic content in the lesson that you probably can't hold. So you need to work out how to distance that. So you can distance it by geography, so by space. You can distance it by time. You can distance it by the actual role. So you can remove it in terms of people. So you're not the person who has suffered gender-based violence. You are perhaps a social worker who is preparing a workshop to give to parents at the school. So you've lessened the heat through the removing of it not being the person it's happened to. You can distance it by geography. So if, for example, there is I'm trying to think of how we do it by geography for this. If there is a space where women who have suffered gender-based violence are staying, then you don't set it in that space. You set it in a different geographical space. So perhaps, and by time, so 15 years or 10 years or 5 years have passed, and these women have now found jobs. So it is now in their workspace in the future. So it's not so hot because there's space, geography's changed, and time has changed. So that's what I mean by not too hot. It can't be too close to the actual thing. So Dorothy Heathcote, who's one of my favorite people, says that the least usable moment is the moment that the airplane crashes because it's too hot. So as soon as you step away from that moment, you become the journalist reporting on the engine fault that caused the engine to crash, or you create a tableau montage of the people on the airplane's life before the crash and after the crash. The moment becomes much more usable when you're not in the heat of it. Okay, I'm going to quickly see what the other questions are. Jeepers, other resources on the topic. There are thousands. I can send through a reading list or deal if that would be useful. You can email me if that would be useful, but there are so many. Great people to look at. Off the top of my head, Helen Nicholson does great work. Like I said, Dorothy Heathcote, she's like the grand old dame. She's old, but not even with us anymore, but really good. Her stuff is solid. Who else? Like I said, Bow and Heap are my go-to people. Katie Dawson is doing great stuff. There really are a lot of people using this as a way of working.
I see Lalu's also said, for example, the fact that learners burnt a school because their phones were taken. It would be good to use this approach.
Okay, great. Is that just a comment with a thank you?
And then
do you think
it's a comment.
And then do you think Dorothy Heathcote is relevant to reference toward teaching and learning today? So I think, it's a lot of people are resistant to working with older theorists, and especially older who are not in our context. But I do think that a lot of what Dorothy Heathcote puts forward is quite universal and timeless. So she works with things like teacher enroll. So those principles are lovely. So the teacher joining in enroll with the learners. She works with the idea of, for example, mantle of the expert. So imbuing, whatever the right word is there, the participants with an expert mantle to sort of heighten their engagement with the drama. So she's got a lot of really good concepts that are still very applicable, but obviously how you use the work would change based on your context and based on the time in which you're living. But I do think she's really, really useful. And there's a great website, I think it's the Dorothy Heathcote Network. If you just type in Dorothy Heathcote, it's pretty much the first thing that comes up online, stuff about Heathcote. How can I encourage my fellow educators to use this model? Their attitude towards anything drama is neutral at best. Okay, great. So I think with that, what I think we need to do, but how this would happen is, I think that as a pedagogy, one lecture, like a proper rigorous course, But I think that when I was teaching, I think it's about finding some others. And we did a module of our staff meetings, and slowly people start to become more open to it as they see it in action. It's also scary. People who aren't familiar with drama see drama as pedagogy as them needing to act, which is a very vulnerable thing. So people become quite resistant to it because it is scary. If you like, but I can't act, and now you want me to act. So it's also about breaking down those misconceptions and misunderstandings about it, that it isn't about acting. It's about taking an art form and applying it. But I do also really think that teachers can't just jump in. There needs to be an element of training in the art form before you apply it to your teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Terri, the questions streaming through, but unfortunately we've reached the end of our time together. Can I maybe suggest that if anyone else has any questions, that they email those questions to you? I just want to thank you for such an engaging workshop, and thank you for just detailing everything in just a really step-by-step manner. So thank you so much, Terri. Before I log off for the end of the day, and this is the end of the day, thank you to everybody who's joined us up until this point. I would just remind you that everything will be up on YouTube for those of you who have experienced load shedding, or for those of you who would like to share this valuable information with your colleagues. Everything will be up on YouTube on the Rustenburg Girls Junior channel. And then tomorrow morning, we start at 9 a.m. with a lovely half day packed full of workshops and keynote speakers. Please remember to also post on our social media, #CAC2022. And thank you again, Terri, for this really, really wonderful presentation.
Sure, such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Odile, and thank you to everyone who was part of the session. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will reply to any emails that I get. Is that my end? Must I turn off my camera? Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Terri. Bye-bye.